Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this episode with myself, Dallin Hawes, and today we're talking about Dave Ramsey, our favorite guy. We've talked about him a number of times, and I think it's important because when we are on the internet and when we are looking for information, whether it's retirement, investing, whatever it is, Dave Ramsey is one of the opinions that are out there, right? And so I was reading a recent article by Dave Ramsey, where the question was posed, hey, how much of my retirement savings should I be spending in retirement, right? What's a good rule of thumb to use? And honestly, as I read this article, I was shocked, very, very shocked, because Dave Ramsey, most people know him, he has a radio show, he's got a blog, all kinds of stuff, millions and millions and millions of people listen to his stuff. And honestly, I respect him tremendously for all the good that he has done. He has produced tremendously good information that has helped a lot of people. Now, with that being said, I'll tell you a little bit about this article. So, in a nutshell, this is what Dave's recommendation was. He said, hey, if you spend about 8% of your portfolio for the rest of retirement, you should be in a good spot. Because this was his reasoning. He said, hey, if you invest in a good mutual fund, then good mutual funds average about 12% per year. And so if you spend 8% of that, well, the other 4% is for the inflation over time, so that over time you get a pay raise in retirement, right? And so that was his argument, that was his reasoning, right? Now, for those that have listened to my stuff for a while, that might shock you as well, because 8% seems like a very, very high number. So let's break this down, right? Let's start from the top. Let's say, okay, the 12%. This is all kind of assuming that we can get about 12% return every year, right? Well, so first, if we look over the last 50 years or so, and we look at the S&P 500 or the C Fund, right? If we look at the C Fund over the last 50 years or so, it has averaged a little over 10%, okay? A little over 10%. So 12% already off the bat seems a little optimistic for me, okay? A little rich for my blood off the bat, right? So, but let's say, hey, you know, the S&P 500 is going to average 10% for your entire retirement. Now let's say that. Well, as a retiree, most retirees don't want to invest 100% into the C Fund, right? Generally speaking, retirees definitely should invest some of their money into the C Fund, but generally not all of it, right? And so if the market's return about 10%, but you have some of your money in other funds, then let's say the average retiree, let's say you're going to make between 6, maybe 9%, right in there, that's probably the range, depending on how you're investing your money. That's going to be the average over time, right? So let's say, let's actually be generous. Let's say, hey, let's say your money's going to grow 8% per year, depending on how you invest it, in retirement, okay? Now, if that was the case, then taking 8% out every year actually sounds reasonable. It's like, okay, if your money grows 8% per year, if you just take out 8%, then your goose that lays the eggs, that is growing, will actually never go away, right? Because you're just taking out what it's growing by. Well, that kind of brings up the next big issue that comes up with retirement planning, is it would be very easy to plan for the future if we knew exactly what the rate of return would be every single year, and if it was consistent every single year. And if it was, then we say, okay, the rate of return is 7% or 8%, whatever it is, right? And we're gonna spend that much money, or a little more to, use up the rest of our money. That'd be easy. Now, where retirees get into some trouble is even if the stock market's going to average a pretty darn good rate of return over time, which odds are it very, very well will, right? Even if that happens, the problem is from year to year, the rate of return is going to vary, fairly significantly, right? In 2008, you might have had a negative, huge, return. So basically, you'd have lost a lot of money. And then over the last 10 years, you would have gained a tremendous amount of money, right? So over time, it's going to fluctuate, right? And so in an ideal world, there's no fluctuation, there's just continuous, consistent growth. But what actually happens is, in the years that maybe you don't earn much, or you actually lose money, well, as a retiree, you're going to still want to take money out, because you want to live your life, right? And so what happens is, you draw down your money, right? So in our example, you're actually killing a piece of your goose that is laying the golden eggs, right? And so over time, let's say the market does return 8%, or your money in retirement does grow 8% per year averaged, but year to year it's going to fluctuate. So if you take out 8% per year, the odds of you running out of money is actually very significantly high because of the fluctuation year to year, right? And so that is why the 4% rule and other rules like that have come into play, because people said, hey, even with the fluctuation, what is a safe withdrawal rate, right? So again, Dave Ramsey, probably what he was trying to say is, hey, just spend what your money's growing by. If your money grows 5% per year, take that amount out. If it grew 15%, maybe take that or a little less, right? That's probably what he was saying. He's saying, hey, whatever your money was growing, take a little less out and you're probably going to be fine, right? Because if you never spend down the principal, then you're going to be fine. Well, the problem is many folks actually want to enjoy their money as much as they possibly can throughout their life, right? Some folks don't have a goal of leaving a large inheritance, right? So it depends. It depends on your situation. There's no perfect rule. It's not Dave Ramsey's rule. It's not the 4% rule. There's no perfect rule that's going to do everything exactly the way you want it, because we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what the growth rate is going to hold, right? It's just a matter of finding a system, a strategy that makes sense to you, that's simple enough to actually execute over time. Whether it's in the first 5 years of retirement or the last 5, or the 20 in between, right? So I guess the reason I'm making this video and the article and the podcast, all these things, is to just share some thoughts, right? Where I was taken aback, I was surprised by something I read on the internet. And I'm sure you, as my listeners, my readers, my viewers, wherever you're at, you see the similar things across the internet. You see ideas, you see opinions, and so I want to share mine. I want to give some perspective and say, hey, these are my thoughts. But again, I'm just a guy on YouTube or on the podcast or wherever you're consuming this. You have to find a strategy that makes sense for you. And often that entails taking a look at your personal situation. And that's something that Dave Ramsey really doesn't do and can't do, right? He's not in the business of doing personalized advice. He's in the business of giving advice to millions of people. But it's your responsibility, because you're the steward of your resources and your retirement, to make it happen, right? To find a system, a strategy that makes sense for you. And I've talked about investing and lots of things on this show before, but so I'm not going to dig into that today. I have tons of videos on investing in retirement, things like that, so definitely check those out if you want more information. But I wanted to share my thoughts on Dave Ramsey's opinion, and I'm sure if you actually sat Dave Ramsey down, he would express it a little differently. Again, I don't envy his job. It's a hard job to try to write content, to produce things that's going to apply to lots and lots of people, when advice never really does, right? It's never perfect. There's general principles that will apply to everyone, but as you dig down and you actually get into the nitty-gritty, well, there's variances, right? And so it's just a matter of you, again, taking responsibility, applying the things I'm telling you to your situation. So that's all I got for you today. I hope you have an incredible rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.